You had a press secretary who has since turned on the administration, who would not do a press conference, and now you go in there. You must have known. Was there hesitancy on your part to taking the job?
Not at all. I wanted to, well, I mean, I should say I was hesitant in the sense of leaving my daughter behind during COVID-19. She was in Florida. So on a personal family level, yes, a hesitancy. But when President Trump called me, it was honestly pretty random. I wasn't expecting the call. I didn't know he was thinking of changing press secretaries. And out of the blue, I get a call from the White House switchboard, and it's the president. And he said, I have a question for you. Do you want to be my press secretary? And I said, it would be the honor of a lifetime, without hesitation. And he said, Mark, get it done. And I assumed by that he meant Mark Meadows, go get it done. And it took a few weeks, but he got it done. So there was apprehension and nervousness, but never once did I think about not taking
I
the
heard
job.
Mark was the one who suggested you. Is that what you found out, or is that not true?
That might be. Honestly, I know the president said to me, Mark Meadows, the president had said to me for a while that he'd been trying to get me in there. And he said, I kept telling my team, get Kayleigh, get Kayleigh, get Kayleigh. And finally, I put my foot down and got it done. So Mark may have been a contributor in that, but President Trump takes the credit. So.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Who grow up, who, are like kind of edgy and kind of want the conflict. Did it go against your personality to spar like this on a daily basis with people who clearly did not like who you work for and had a problem with almost everything you said? Did that go against the grain in your personality?
It did. And, I went through academia, all these liberal institutions, and, I'm more of a conciliatory person. But I think what President Trump taught me is we've got to be a little bit of a fighter. And it was actually, I was on Team Ben Carson at first. I didn't officially work for Ben Carson. That's who I was supporting. Changed to President Trump, and only changed to him when I was on, at the time, Harvard Law School's campus. And I saw how angry the left was, and I saw how hesitant conservatives, including me, were to speak up. And then I saw this bold fighter in President Trump, who sometimes said things a little indelicately, not the way I would say them, but was a fighter and bold and conservative and unashamed. And while it went against my personality to always be, kind of combative or in a mano a mano, I learned a lot from President Trump and realized we need a little bit of fight, especially when we have the truth.
So when I watch Peter Doocy engage the president, engage Jen Psaki, and even the president, what I think the big difference is, it's not the tough questions, it's the tone.
Yes.
And it's just the anger and tone and disdain for you, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and for the president. It's really dissuading and I think harmful. Here's an example of Jim Acosta, the worst showman I've ever seen go into that room. He had no interest in the answers, only in making himself more famous.
Will you and other White House officials be wearing masks at the rally?
It's a personal choice. I won't be wearing a mask. I can't speak for my colleagues.
And why won't you wear a mask? Is it sort of a personal political statement? Is it because the president would be disappointed in you if you don't wear a mask?
It's a personal decision. I'm tested regularly. I feel that it's safe for me not to be wearing a mask, and I'm in compliance with CDC guidelines, which are recommended but not required.
So it was personal. He was trying to get some type of story instead of get answers for his story.
And that was one of the milder Jim Acosta exchanges. He regularly would take me out of context. For instance, I remember one time I said, the science should not stand in the way of opening schools because the science is on our side. And I listed all the footnotes to that. And he just tweets out, Kayleigh says science shouldn't stand in the way, which obviously is the direct opposite of what I was saying. He left out the second part. Even Jake Tapper called him out for that one. But one example of many of dishonesty. And what it boils down to is some of these reporters, especially the loud ones, Jim Acosta, Caitlin Collins, John Carl, it's about their personal brand. They're trying to create a brand that is anti-Trump, a fighter, that is against Trump at all costs. And so they try to create these viral moments. And there's a handful of them. They're very loud. I think most of your listeners probably know who they are. Jim Acosta among them, and it's a real travesty.
He was by far the worst. Tam Donaldson, all those people through time would ask questions had to do with the news, and maybe we're a little abrasive in doing it. But not like this, not like I've ever seen before. So what was it like behind the scenes? Because a lot of the press secretary is without the cameras there, right? Would they be different with you?
Yes, I would say, yes and no. Some of them were very nice on a personal level. We'd be on Air Force One, but I was never... when you're in the press world in government or, with a political campaign, you kind of have a choice because reporters try to say, let's go have drinks, let's go have dinner, let's meet for coffee. And I was never one that really took people up on that because I felt that those scenarios were always hazardous. I think a few scenarios come to mind where people say information off the record and the press doesn't honor it. So I kept my distance. They were cordial and kind people like Steve Holland. Jeff Mason was actually a very nice guy. But, I tried to kind of keep my professional distance because I realized just how hostile it was against Trump and conservatives generally.
So a lot of times people have to decompress after that job, especially working for the president, President Trump in particular. Did you have to decompress?
Not really. And people say, like, how stressful was the job? Sure, it was stressful. There were definitely hard points.
No time off.
But no time off. I had weekends at home, but we were always working. You're always on the clock. But I would say we had fun in the job. I mean, the times we were in my office, in the press secretary's office, sitting by the fireplace, just laughing about like the kinds of crazy questions we could get asked, brainstorming, putting a lot of our intellect into it with my small team. I had 2 confidants that were really would help me spitball the issues. We had a blast. We had a lot of fun. And I think that's the key to the job. And being honored.
Did you really have fun?
I did. We had so much fun because we would identify the hardest question. We'd go out there and they would never ask the hardest question because they didn't do their research. And I knew the question that I'd have to kind of wiggle and it would be hard for me to answer because there wasn't a good answer for it. But they never really got to that question. It was always kind of the low-hanging fruit, like, why aren't you wearing a mask? Yeah.
Gotcha. The pandemic changed everything,
yes.
Right? I mean, you had one narrative, the Russia narrative that CNN was going to ask about in MSNBC every day. But the pandemic changed everything. How did you handle that? Because you now had doctors you're handling at the same time as the president. The president had the same messages as doctors. Should they have a press conference together? Let's stop doing that. Let's start doing that. It was a tough time.
Yeah, you point out a really important issue because I come into the West Wing and unlike, let's say, Sarah Sanders, who was a deputy press secretary, then got the role, I had never been a deputy press secretary in the White House. I had been an intern, but that's nothing in comparison to actually being in the West Wing and working there. So I come in never having worked in the West Wing during the middle of a COVID-19 lockdown. That is literally when I came in. I had watched the infamous coronavirus task force briefings with Fauci contradicting the president. So it was a challenge. And when I came in, the COVID task force briefings kind of started going off the rails. So we stopped doing those so much. They ceased to be productive for the American people because of the way the press handled pitting Fauci against Trump, et cetera. So I kind of took the place of the coronavirus task force briefings, which was a challenge, but I would get the best information I could from Dr. Birx, who was a big help in that regard, and Joie and, Alex Azar, and then you bring the best information you can to the American people. So it was a challenge, but it was fun.
She went to Oxford, Harvard,
Yes.
University of Miami. I want to find out all those things about Kayleigh McEnany. Also have you comment on the news of the day. In fact, before we actually take a time out, I really believe that there's something going on in these cities. We watched our tree burn, and then we watched the fact that arsonist is now out. And we're seeing all these repeat criminals when you go to a parade at 12 noon in Wisconsin and get run over by somebody that had no business being out of jail, by a repeat offender. Do you think there's going to be hell to pay like never before in 2022 in small and big elections?
Oh, yes. And we saw over the summer when crime was particularly bad, that crime soared to one of the top issues, if not the top issue. So I think it's immigration, economy, and crime, no doubt about it. And, I think one of the things that's not talked about enough, we talk about these DAs and all the problems at the state and local level, which is true and accurate. But we also don't often talk about how Joe Biden's been an aider and abetter of the defund the police movement. Jen Psaki will say he doesn't support defunding the police, but the entire campaign, he kind of let that movement play out instead of firmly pressing it down. And that's the reason we're here. It's liberal policies and President Biden. He has a hand in this.
Right. He earned this struggle.
Yes.
It's not as if it's just a cycle thing. This is a performance thing. Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Kilmeade. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to click to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page. This is the only way that I know for sure that you're not going to miss any great commentary, any great news bites, any great interviews coming your way on Fox. You can get it all here on YouTube. So subscribe right now.